Welcome back to Product Data Weekly. This is a short practical podcast where each week we break down the operational issues that slow down launches, create manual work, or quietly limit growth inside product data and e-commerce teams. There's no theory, no hype, just what we actually see happening inside of catalogs at scale. I'm Claire, I'm co-founder of SKU Launch and Start With Data.
Hi everyone, it's Ben here again.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about something that we get asked or we kind of observe a lot in sales processes. And that is, do you need a PIM? And if you don't need a PIM, what are your other options? So Ben, can you put some meat on the bone?
As Claire said, we're constantly in discussions with prospects and customers about, the whole PIM question, and PIM as an acronym. Yeah, it's a very solution-oriented acronym in the industry, and often, businesses think they need this kind of PIM will solve all of their problems around product data. And what we found, and we've talked to hundreds of businesses over the years, is that there's two really big myths about PIM systems, and we really want to kind of try and clear them up today in this episode. So the first thing is that a lot of businesses think a PIM will fix the mess that your suppliers are sending you, right? And the reality is it won't. In most cases, it won't. And then the second myth is that a PIM will somehow magically enrich all your product data. That's like write the description, source the attributes, fill in the missing specs, generate the SEO copy. But most of the time, it won't do that either. And in our experience, a PIM basically stores and distributes product data, right? That's it.
Yeah. Can I just jump in and say, I think a lot of PIM vendors are quite cheeky in the way that they market the PIM, because enrichment's thrown around a lot in their sales and marketing. And it gives you a place to enrich data, right? But it doesn't actually do it for you. So I think that is one of the key things that people often get missold.
Absolutely. I was talking to a business a few days ago, and they told me that they'd been looking at solutions for about 3 months, and they'd gone through several demos and iterations with a couple of PIM vendors, and they still couldn't articulate after those demos the actual value of the PIM. And the reason was, and unpicking, was it's actually the two other problems that business are trying to solve, right? Because a PIM can easily become a very expensive place to store your product data in a lot of cases. So what we were going to dig in is just, what are the other options? And, in cases where, sometimes you might need a PIM, a lot of the time you won't need a PIM, or you may need a PIM plus some other basically.
So maybe what are some examples where you think a PIM is like 90% of the time the right answer for businesses?
Yeah. So what a PIM actually does, in our experience, is a few things, right? So it stores product data in a structured central place, right? And that, that's important. It's important to have a single version of the truth for your structured data, okay? So that's one thing a PIM does. So that, in a way, it's kind of a very glorified product data-oriented database, right? With a nice UX and UI and all of that sort of stuff. The second thing that a PIM usually does really well, and we're going to come onto this a bit later, you got to be careful here, but it also is able to distribute that data to multiple channels, right? So website, marketplaces, print, trading partners, PIMs generally are well designed for those sorts of downstream syndication and sharing use cases. And then there's some other stuff that PIMs generally do well, things like product record versioning, storing localized content, channel specific variants. And there's the four things around governance that kind of links that. PIMs often kind of enforce a structure and enforce a kind of product data model that, things like required fields, attribute standards. Some PIMs come with like kind of business process workflows in them as well. So as the kind of master source structure, process governance, distribution tool, generally a PIM works really well. What I was also going to add, I think we were kind of having a little chat about this earlier, was what we generally see is in like brands and manufacturers, a PIM can actually be very valuable, right? Most of the businesses we talk to now of the brand and manufacturing businesses. They can really articulate that ROI of PIM because effectively they're preparing channel content, right? They're preparing channel content for downstream partners, and in many cases, a lot of brands and manufacturers, whether in B2B, B2B, lots of channels, right, to syndicate that data to. So that's what a PIM does. So if you cut through all of the product marketing lingo, which there's a crap load of it out there, and you just you just focus on what it actually does, that does those things quite well.
Yep. Okay, cool. So you would say probably brands and manufacturers, most of the time, it's a really useful tool to have for them. Okay.
I think even in our experience in Start with Data over the last few years, I think I don't know what proportion of our client base have ended up PIM project client base are brands and manufacturers, but I think it's quite a high percentage.
We probably should know that.
Yeah, we probably should, shouldn't we? Yeah. It's a high percentage.
It is a high percentage, you're right. Yeah. I think that I would definitely, like, looking back at all the big PIM projects that we've done, they've all been brands manufacturers over the last year. Yeah. Okay. And then we've talked about the fact that then there are some big gaping holes that don't get done by the PIM.
Yeah.
So talk me through, so you used an example before of a customer that you were chatting to. Did you say they were a retailer?
Retailer, large catalogue retailer with 100 odd suppliers.
Okay. So what were the problems then that they were trying to solve that the PIM couldn't solve?
So they were trying to solve the supplier onboarding problem.
Okay.
So that's taking unstructured and structured sources from suppliers in new line forms and structuring and that data and onboarding that data. And they were struggling with content generation for their e-commerce channel. They were struggling with data enrichment and extraction to fill in gaps. They were struggling with translation. They were struggling with image generation and editing. Basically, they're all things related to bad product data, either onboarding data or enriching data.
Mm-hmm.
And then those aren't things, in our experience, that a PIM does very well, if at all. Now, there's a lot of PIMs out there that have integrated generative AI into their platforms that allow you to write product descriptions. And I mean, to be honest with you, they all jumped on the bandwagon then. That's easy. But things like attribute enrichment and large scale enrichment and translations and normalization from suppliers and onboarding portals and those sorts of things. Yeah, there isn't a lot of
so it's all the upstream work that even if you had a PIM, you're not going to get the value out of the PIM unless you have
that. And also the other thing we haven't mentioned is taxonomy and attribute model design as well. Like a PIM assumes you've got all that defined already, right? It doesn't give you the tools to define that. So you could kind of think of a PIM like a bit like a filing cabinet and not a content team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't do the work. It stores the work.
You've still got to have Janet in accounts sorting that out for you. Yeah.
Janet gets a hard time.
Yeah, poor Janet. Yeah. Okay. So that's cool, but I guess then people would want to know then if a PIM's not right, then what other things should you be looking at instead?
So this is, I mean, we're going to sound like long playing records here, but you try and work out the problems you're actually trying to solve before going out to market for a technology solution. Like I'm sure this is the case in most verticals, but there's something about PIM, this industry, that it's like every board and head of e-commerce, the minute they go into a new role, it's like, oh, we need a PIM, we're ready. And it's like half the time they don't really understand what the use cases are they're actually trying to solve. What are you trying to solve, right? And I can guarantee you're trying to solve one of two things. You're really trying to solve one of two things when you're going to market for a PIM most of the time, as well as probably the structuring and the data storage sides of things.
And are you talking for specific types, so like retailers and
I
distributors,
would
or do
say
you mean?
more, yeah, more for retailers and distributors. I think I'm not saying every brand and manufacturer needs PIM, but I guarantee you the brand and manufacturer has a syndication
Yeah, they've got
problem,
more compelling use
which means
cases,
it's
don't
more compelling. Yeah, as
they? Yeah,
well as things like PDF creation, data sheet creation, all those sort of things that a manufacturer has to do for
yeah,
compliance reasons. Compliance, data storage, all that sort of stuff is really important. But for retailers and distributors, a marketplace as well, there's always two problems. The first problem they're usually trying to solve is the intake problem. So this is the upstream suppliers sending incomplete, badly formatted data as
yeah,
part of new product introduction processes. And then you've probably got a team of people just rekeying spreadsheets, making data usable or not in many cases. PIM doesn't fix that, right? You need a supplier onboarding discipline, templates, validation, kind of at the front door or the back door. Depends which way you look at the
yeah,
organisation. I'm sure e-commerce people think that as the back door.
yeah,
And then the second problem that you're probably trying to solve is the enrichment problem, right? So
yeah.
you've got the basic data from your suppliers, but you haven't got descriptions, attributes, imagery, SEO copy, commonality in filtering, taxonomy schema, all of that sort of thing. And a PIM doesn't fix that either, right? You need writers, content workflows, AI assisted tools to prepare all of that data for your channel. So basically, when if you're looking at the problems you're trying to solve, you should look at where the pains actually lie first within that end-to-end product data process. And then is it getting the data in? Is it making the data good? Or is it getting the data out? Or is it storing the data? If it's storing the data and getting the data out, then you've probably got a more compelling PIM business case than getting the data in and making the data good.
Yeah. And I think there's lots of cases where a PIM and something else is actually
Yeah,
a really good fit for businesses. But then it's then maybe saying, okay, well, do you need the full PIM that's all bells and whistles, or could you do more, maybe a lightweight PIM that would solve a lot of
absolutely.
those, and then have other tools or
Yeah,
processes around it
yeah.
to work that out?
I I think for most I think for many, so the way this usually plays out, we see in PIM sales cycles is most customers. So if you're a brand manufacturer, you probably end up with a PIM plus a syndication tool, or a PIM with syndication.
Yeah.
And if you're a retail distributor, you end up with a PIM plus an onboarding and enrichment tool. And then sometimes a syndicate if you're sharing to marketplaces and e-commerce and that sort of thing. So it's very like working out the different parts of the process and applying the solutions to them rather than the other way around. The danger of not doing this is you will buy a solution that becomes a very expensive data store, and you will run out of budget to do any of the data enrichment and
Yeah.
onboarding work.
Yeah.
And there's some businesses that we work with now that literally just did that, have done that.
Yeah, they're trying to retrospectively fix that
Yeah,
problem, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
right.
So if you could maybe just summarize maybe like when a PIM is the right call. There's like a little quick fire, just as a little
Okay,
takeaway.
so a PIM is the right call if your product data intake is already disciplined from your suppliers. You're getting the content you need, fully enriched,
In the
ready to
format that you
publish.
need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A PIM is good if you're distributing across many channels, languages, regions, and the manual cost of kind of doing all of that channel enrichment is basically killing your team. Just the sheer volume of that. A PIM is the right call if you've got a team and a process maturity to actually maintain the data in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A PIM is a tool for businesses that already have their act together around data onboarding and enrichment. And for everyone else listening, the answer is usually a lot further upstream.
Yeah. To fix that bit first before you, yeah.
Yeah, upstream or in the messy middle of enrichment. Call it, don't you? Because it is. It is a mess. It's like, and then you know, and then it's like a PIM is the right call in those contexts as well. It doesn't have to be like a really expensive one. It can just be a really lean. You could just have a lean database, you know, a lean PIM type of thing to do the. All right.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight. I think it's really useful
It's a pleasure.
to kind of
Love
understand how you cut it up with different types of customers. I think it's really interesting. So thank you everybody for tuning in this week. As always, if you want more tips and tricks, you can get our newsletter into your inbox every Thursday. You can find that at productdataweekly.com. And we shall see you next week.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye.
See you now. Bye.